on this episode of Jeff Does Vegas.
So I'm opening for Jackie Mason that following week, and that's going well. And then I think it was 4 or 5 nights into the run, Rodney comes in, and I guess I'm on stage and he watches me, and the audience is enjoying it and stuff like that. And I come off stage and Rodney's standing there and he goes, "They obviously enjoy what you do. What do you do?" Because he hadn't seen the whole act.
Las Vegas.
It's more than just a city.
It's a feeling.
It's that feeling of excitement when you spot the lights of the strip out the airplane window.
It's that feeling of awe as you stroll down the boulevard, taking in the sights and sounds.
And it's that feeling of satisfaction, knowing that you're in the greatest city in the world.
Over 42 million people from around the world share that feeling every year.
And I'm one of them.
Taking you to the world-famous Vegas Strip and beyond, my name is Jeff, and this is Jeff Does Vegas. Hey there, and welcome to episode number 131 of Jeff Does Vegas. Before we get into this episode of the podcast, I just want to take a moment to thank my guest from the last episode, Julian Romero, the host of the Vegas Confessions podcast. I love it when I can get fellow Vegas content creators on the podcast and learn about what drives them to share their passion for the city we both love. Julian and I talked about what he loves about being a Vegas podcaster, what got him into podcasting in the first place, and how he's managed to turn a passion project into a full-time gig. If you haven't listened as of yet, jump into the archives at jeffdoesvegas.com or search out episode number 130, the Vegas Confessions podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, here we go. On to the show. Picture it. It's the late 1970s. You're a singer, songwriter, guitar player working the bar scene in New York City. One night, after having had enough of dealing with crowds that don't pay attention to you, you decide to mess around with the lyrics of a popular song. And you manage to turn that into a career spanning almost 40 years that's given you the chance to work with some of the biggest names in comedy and music. That's exactly what my guest for this episode of the podcast did. Dennis Blair is a Las Vegas-based comedian and musician who, over the course of the last 4 decades, has worked with the likes of Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, and George Carlin. He co-wrote a feature film, he's worked on TV specials, he's made several appearances on The Tonight Show and other late-night shows, he's released multiple CDs of both music and comedy, and he recently released a book titled Touring with Legends. Dennis and I talked about what initially got him into comedy, the early days of working with Rodney and what led to their falling out, life on the road with Joan, what it was like spending 18 years as the opening act for George, and much, much more. Please enjoy my conversation with Dennis Blair.
I was always kind of funny in school anyway, because I was a nerd. So, I know it's hard to believe I was a nerd. But, it started like in 7th, 8th grade when we had study period and I would do impressions, of teachers and of political figures to get them to laugh. And then they laughed at me. But, it wasn't something I was going to do ever for a living. So cut to, I'm like singing in bars, and nobody's listening because they're all talking and they're all drinking and no one's paying attention to the stupid singer on the stage. And I got offended. I said, how come they're not listening to me? How come no one's applauding? So during a break, I went upstairs at this club and I just came up with this parody of the Bee Gees hit, Staying Alive. Singing Too High was my take on it. So I came back after the break. I did a James Taylor song. I did a Paul Simon song. And then I threw this parody in and people started going, huh? What? That's not the words. I think he's got the word. And then they realized it was a joke. And then they started laughing. And I went, ooh, maybe I'm onto something here. So then the next break, I came up with another thing. And then I started doing some patter in between. And from that complete accidental thing that I developed over a couple of months at that club, I moved into the Manhattan, four blocks from Dangerfield, and auditioned with the stupid little 20-minute act that I come up with. And that's how it started, the professional comedy.
And so how many years have you been at it now?
Oh, Jesus, almost 40.
And all of that coming from what was essentially almost like an FU to the audience.
Yes, it was, and it still is.
And now, for those who may not be stand-up comedy aficionados, Dangerfield's, of course, a legendary comedy club owned originally by comedy legend Rodney Dangerfield.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's closed now. I went there. I was in New York in May and passed by it. It's got a for sale sign on it. Very sad. Yes, but that was a great, Rodney would play there on 61st and 1st in Manhattan. Jackie Mason, he'd have all sorts of big headliners. And then comedy most of the time when he wasn't there. Just guys, schlubs like me would come in and headline.
And so what year was this then? By this point, late 70s, Rodney was already pretty big doing stand-up. He'd been on The Tonight Show a few times and had been performing live, obviously. But this was pre-Caddyshack, which was when things really went crazy for him, right?
Yeah, my timing was perfect for once in my life. So I went there at the end of 1979 to do my little audition. And from that audition that went really well at 1:00 in the morning, they said, "Hey, you want to open for Jackie Mason the next week?" And I said, "Okay." I was just doing this stuff at clubs, So, yeah, sure. So that's how that started. But yeah, 79, and then Rodney came in the next week, and the story goes on from there. But that's about when I started, like beginning of 80.
Tell me about that first meeting with Rodney.
So I'm opening for Jackie Mason that following week, and that's going well. And then I think it was 4 or 5 nights into the run, Rodney comes in, and I guess I'm on stage and he watches me, and the audience is enjoying it and stuff like that. And I come off stage and Rodney's standing there and he goes, "They obviously enjoy what you do. What do you do?" Because he hadn't seen the whole act. So I said, "Hi, Rodney. I do song parodies and like observational stuff." And so he goes, "Oh, I'm going to watch it." So he watched the second show. So that's how that was. He said, "Hey, you're funny. You want to open for me next week?" I said, "Is this really happening?" This was not supposed to be happening. I'm supposed to be doing wine and cheese clubs and being an unattentive and not paying attention to singer. And here I am opening for Rodney Dangerfield. So that's how that happened.
So many entertainers that I've met over the course of my life, whether it's comedians, musicians, actors, actresses, whatever, they're always very boisterous in their performances, but they tend to be a little bit introverted in their real life. What was Rodney Dangerfield like in the real world when he wasn't on stage, when he wasn't performing?
Well, he was I'll have to say he was the unhappiest person I ever met in my life. He couldn't enjoy his success. He used to tell me, he says, "I was born with a down head. That doesn't change when you become successful, So, he was very subdued, definitely more subdued than the stage persona. But he could be funny. He could be funny off stage. We had some laughs, but all in all, he was like, he got into we were going to a gig somewhere. I think it was Westbury, Long Island. And I was waiting in the limo that he had booked. And I'm waiting for him to get in the car. And I'm there for like 5 minutes. And he comes in and just the first thing he says, not hello, how are you? He goes, "It's all bullshit, man. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit." I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah. So, people think I'm, oh, I know Chevy Chase. Who cares? It's like that was the whole ride. I'm going, he either got up on the wrong side of the bed that day or was just in a foul mood. And, but that was his overall thing. He says, "What's it all mean?" And I wanted to tell him, "It means you're rich and you don't have to worry about anything anymore." But,
when a car ride starts like that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And that was an extreme case because most of the time, he was pretty cool and, we'd enjoy each other's company. But, there was always that underlying, what's it all mean? It just could not be. Every once in a while, he'd have like a burst of like 3 minutes of, "Man, look what happened to me. I can't believe this," after Caddyshack, like you said. "I can't believe I'm in movies now and people are coming to see me," and all that stuff. But that was rare. He just didn't, he just was the way he always was because he was a sad guy.
To a certain degree, then that whole "I get no respect" thing was really just almost like a slightly exaggerated him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it fit the actual persona pretty well. Get the respect.
How long did you tour with Rodney Dangerfield? It was quite a length of time.
Yeah, I was with him for 3.5 years. So 1980 through 83, middle of 83 or something like that. Touring with him, here's the thing with Rodney. once he liked you, he wanted to hang out with you like all the time. And I was at that, I got married in 81, and I wanted to kind of hang out with my wife and my dog every once in a while. But he lived in Westport, Connecticut, which was across the bay from where I lived, which was Port Jefferson, Long Island. And he'd always call, "Hey, come on over. We got to do some writing." And I'm like, "But my mother's here. She's visiting." Tell her to go screw herself. Come on over. We're going to go write. Okay. I guess I have to, because if I don't, he'll get pissed off and he'll fire me. That's the downside of working with celebrities. You're a victim of their moods. But so my point being that I would spend he wanted to spend a whole bunch of time with me, come up with stuff. We'll just hang out. So, but it was fun most of the time. But sometimes it was like, okay, I guess I got to go.
I would imagine to a certain degree. I mean, that hanging out with a guy like Rodney must have been exhausting as well.
Yeah, I mean, no, you know what? It really wasn't exhausting. Once we got together, and if it was like a situation like that where, I was going to do something else today, but okay, we'll hang out. But once you got there, it was kind of fun, because we would write stuff together. We'd work on. I wrote him a joke once and didn't go over, but he still wanted to write with me, and we did a couple of TV specials, and we wrote Easy Money together, and so I mean, most of the time it was fine, and he could be really funny, many times on those days when he didn't say, "What's it all mean, man?" But yeah, it was cool, and it was I got to meet. It was amazing that all the people that came to see him, these big stars, these packed audiences and stuff. So it was a very cool time.
1983, the movie Easy Money, Rodney Dangerfield, Joe Pesci, a funny movie, a movie that I've seen a lot. That's kind of, I think, maybe garnered a little bit of a cult classic status over the last few years. This is a film that you were a part of. You actually were one of the co-writers of this movie. Had you ever written anything of that scale, or even of a slightly smaller scale when you came on board to be involved with Easy Money?
No, this is the crazy thing about my career. I mean, you couldn't have planned my career if you wanted to. I think I did that club I did where I was pissed off at everybody. I did that maybe 3 months before hooking up with Rodney. Within 6 months, I'm co-writing a movie like the biggest comedian in America. And here's what happened. So he did he was doing his club, and he would have, it'd be pretty full, but not every night. He was a well-known comic, but he wasn't like a superstar yet. So, I mean, 3/4 full on, half full on weekdays, full on weekends. But all of a sudden, Caddyshack makes him huge. He like blows up. Now there's lines around the block. No one can get into his club because there's lines around the block. So he has to start touring. And he's like, he's like the biggest comic in Hollywood. So they want to do a movie with him. And he says to me, he's in his dress. He goes, "Yeah, listen, they want to do a movie with me, starring me because of Caddyshack. So if you come up with any ideas, let me know." Now, I've been doing comedy, 6 months? He says, the biggest comedy in America just said, "Oh, if you come up with an idea for a movie, why don't you breeze it by me?" I run home that night, and I go, "I got to think of a movie. Got to think of an idea. And I come up with the basic idea, which is his mother-in-law, who hates him, says she'll give him $10 million in her will if he quits smoking, drinking, and gambling for 1 year. And he liked the idea. I said, great. Then he got 2 writers. So he doesn't have me as a writer. I just came up with the idea. So, and I'm thrilled with that, But he has these 2 writers, Michael Endler, who was the husband of his then manager, and P.J. O'Rourke. He's written books. He's written for Rolling Stone. He was a satirist. They hired him. So he, Rodney, and Michael are the writers. 2 weeks into it, I get a call from Rodney. "Yeah, they just came up with a script. It's shit. I want you to read it." "Really? Okay." So he sends it over to me. I read it. It's okay. It's a first draft, so obviously it needs to be worked on. So I call him up and I go, "Yeah, Rodney, I read it. Yeah, it's okay. It's not great, but it's, And he says, "Just as I thought. It's shit." He calls up his manager, whose husband is one of the writers, and says, "Dennis agrees with me. The script is a piece of shit. I want him to be a writer on the movie." So they have a writing session like a week later, and unbeknownst to me, he had said that to his manager. whose husband is writing. And I meet with PJ and Michael, and they're glaring at me the whole time, and I have no idea why. And I'm going, okay, these guys hate me for some reason. A couple of days later, it comes out. We start getting along. We start working together. And he goes, so why did you hate our script? I go, I never hated your script. Cleared that up right away. And then everything was relatively clear sailing from then. But that's the way it went at the beginning.
And so were you on the set while they were filming the movie?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most of the time. Because, they wanted first-time director, first-time writers. And they, if a scene wasn't working, they'd come to us immediately, go, we need some new stuff. Come up. So we'd always be on there to help out.
In going back and rewatching some of the clips of the movie with Joe Pesci, you can see that when he is interacting and working with Rodney, he's trying very hard to keep it together. And there are times when he obviously isn't. And my limited knowledge of the movie and the TV industry is that if that stuff's making it into the film, that was probably the best take that they could get. So I'm thinking there was probably a lot of busting up on that set. Was it a fun set to be on?
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, it was. Was it a fun set? Well, for me, it was amazingly fun because I'm on a movie set. I'm doing a movie that I wrote, that I helped write. But there was, Rodney was difficult. He didn't understand. Rodney did not understand even during the writing of the movie, which took 2 years. He did not understand sitting around his table in his apartment. What? That's not funny. What's the joke? If it wasn't a joke, he didn't understand why people would laugh at it. So, if it was a situation that was funny, if it was irony or whatever, all that stuff. No, you gotta have a one-liner there. So we were forced to it's his movie. We were forced to do that. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. So Pesci, who started out as being a huge Rodney fan, it's just like by the end of the shoot, it was like, if somebody came, if Pesci ad-libbed a line on the set, he got a laugh, Rodney would take it from him. I mean, stuff like that. So, I'll do that line. I'll do that. Okay. So, and poor Pesci's like, Pesci wanted to hang out in character with Rodney because that's what he did. Let's hang out as our characters. And Rodney said, I don't do that. Here's what I do. You throw a line at me, I throw a line back at you. That's what we do. Immediately, you could see him going, can I get out of this? Did I sign the contract yet? Is there time to? So there was that, So by the end, it was like, okay, I think I'm never going to do this again. And if you notice, all the people that were in it, no one ever lists that movie as in their credits. You never hear Joe talking about Easy Money. You never hear You never heard Taylor Negron say, "Oh yeah, I did." Yeah. Jennifer Jason Leigh, who's in everything now. You never see her mention that. I don't think the actors generally had a great time, but I did.
So you said you worked with Rodney for 3-ish years. What was behind things wrapping up with Rodney? When did it all come to an end with the two of you working together?
Oh, it all came to, Rodney was, I don't know what astrological sign he is, but it's apparently a sign that if you do one thing that he considers wrong, that's it, you're done. Which is, I've toured with a lot of celebrities. The best thing you can do is to keep out of their way and not bond too much because something's going to go wrong sooner or later. So Rodney, he barely got mad at me. We always got along, and he'd have a little flare up here and there for something stupid. But this time, we brought our dog to his home in Westport because our dog at the time was like our child. We didn't have children. And we loved our dog. And I had to go over there all the time. I said, Rodney, can we bring our dog to your house? Okay, but make sure he doesn't go swimming in my pool. That should have been the first clue. We went, what? He had a pool. He says, don't bring a swing because I'll have to clean all the hair out of the pool. I said, okay, we'll try to adhere to that. So my wife and I, we weren't married yet, but we're in the jacuzzi at Rodney's house. He goes to take a nap. Our dog is roaming freely, jumps up on the ledge, licks our face, falls into the jacuzzi just as Rodney wakes up and comes in. It is about to come in. We go, quick, hide the dog. He's going to think we took it in his pool. And we couldn't get into the garage. It's a long story, but when I'm standing there with a wet dog, he goes, you took this dog swimming. He goes, no, he fell into the jacuzzi, back and forth. He wouldn't believe us. He's really pissed off for some reason because the dog was in the water literally for like 12 seconds. And we had to stay over because the last ferry had left from Port Jefferson. So we had to stay overnight with this guy who's pissed off at us. So and he held a grudge about that forever. And the second thing was Joan Rivers, who he hated because he claimed that she stole his jokes, which she didn't. Called her people called me once and said, "Do you want to do 10 nights with Joan Rivers?" I said, "I don't know. Rodney doesn't like her, but I don't think so." So I told Rodney the next day, "Yeah, Joan Rivers people called. They said I turned her down." He said, "No, you can't do that. She doesn't. She guest hosts on the Tonight Show. You got to do it." I go, "Really? Because you hate her. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to stand in your way. Do the." I said, "Okay." So I signed the contract to do 10 days with Joan. 2 days later, Rodney goes, "You know what? I've been thinking about it. I don't think you should do it." I go, "I signed a contract." He goes, "Well, I don't like her." "Yeah, but Rodney," I said. So he was pissed at me for taking the gig that he told me to get. So those two things eventually led to him firing.
Between the dog incident and then the thing with signing on to do shows with Joan Rivers, do you think maybe he was just looking for an excuse to ditch you, or were things still good at that point?
No, I don't think so. I think that was his personality, because every comedian that followed me that he used to open, sooner or later got into trouble with him for some stupid thing. Until this guy named Harry Basil, who called him on it. And Harry did something like Harry started directing those movies that he does that go to video, that went to video, and something like he thought Harry's name was too big on the credits. He said, "Oh, what are you, bigger than me or something?" And Harry stopped the car. He told me this. He said, "I stopped the car." He said, "Rodney, you do this to every person you make friends with, and I'm not going to take it. If you want to fire me, but you're full of it, and I don't want to. You're out of your mind." And Rodney actually said, "Yeah, you're right. So Harry called him on it, and Harry's the only guy who lasted with him for about 10 years. So, yeah. So I think that's just the way he was. He would flare up and hold a grudge.
Did you ever get a chance to work with Rodney again?
Yes. Maybe this was 2 or 3 years after he fired me. I was at the Improv in LA, and he was there, and we reconnected. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I guess he's sort of semi-forgot. And I had my not newborn, but 2-year-old kid. We brought him and he says, "Oh, you have a son? Oh my God!" So the warm fatherly feelings he had came back. And then like a couple of weeks later, we ran into each other at the Laugh Factory. He was with his new wife, Joyce. Again, I said, "Hi, Rodney." "Hi, Dennis. How you doing?" And he turned to his wife and said, "What am I mad at him for again?" He forgot. So then he called me, his friend called and says, "Rodney wants to do a one-nighter with you and Harry Basil in Phoenix." And I said, "Okay." And we did it. And he got drunk on the plane back. He chartered the plane back and came up to the both of us and said, "Harry, you were fantastic. Dennis, you were okay." He was still giving me the needle, And then he wanted me to do it again. But by that time I was with George Carlin. And I said, I can't. And he said, "Oh, if you want to do that." He was getting mad again because I had another gig and I wasn't even with him anymore. So this is why you never want to get into show business.
For all you kids out there who are thinking about getting into show business.
Right. Don't open for celebrities. It won't work out well for you.
Did you get a chance to reconcile with Rodney before he passed away back in 2004?
Well, the last thing was that that one-nighter that I just described, and I think that's the last time I saw him. I might have run into him one more time at the Laugh Factory, but we never got together anymore, because by that time I was, I'd done 2 years with Joan Rivers and 1 year with Tom Jones, and then Carlin was almost 20. So by that time, I was on the road a lot, so we didn't get a chance to hang out. And I'd moved to LA, so he still lived in New York, and I think he had a place in LA too, but our paths didn't cross much.
Definitely want to talk about your time with Joan Rivers, because that, of course, again, another huge part of your life and of your career. How did Joan Rivers and her people become aware of what you were doing?
Apparently, even when I was with Rodney, I got this great agent who would, when Rodney wasn't on the road all the time, so he would book me with other acts, Spinners, Laura Branigan, the Righteous Brothers. So I opened for a whole bunch of other people at casinos in Atlantic City and Las Vegas. So one maitre d' at Caesars told, I guess they were looking for an opening act when Joan was there, and he told them about me. And so they called me. That's what happened. I don't know if they saw a tape or what, but they decided to try me out for 10 days.
Based on the experience that you had working with Rodney and the direction that things went there, did you have any fear or trepidation about working with Joan Rivers?
Well, yeah, it was like I basically this better work out because I'm suddenly fired. I'm suddenly job. The dream has ended. Yeah, and also she was traveling at the time. She always at that time. This was the mid '80s, so Joan was always using 2 opening acts for some reason. She always had a musical opening act and a comedian. So I guess I fit both bills, but she was using at the time Gary Shandling.
Oh wow, okay.
Who wasn't the name he was about to become. He was kind of he'd done 1 or 2 Tonight shows. So they came in. Her and her husband Edgar came in. It was the Chateau de Ville in Massachusetts, and that was the first time I was going to work for her. And I was a little bit nervous, especially when Edgar comes up to me right before I go on and goes, "All right, don't fuck up, Blair. We'll be watching you." Oh, great. Thanks. Put me at ease. I really appreciate that. Luckily, again, good audience, great audience. The shows went really well. She didn't say anything to me, though. She was in her dressing room. So I came off stage and there was nobody there. I'm going, uh-oh. Did my dog fall in her pool while I was on stage? Nothing. And then they come out of the dressing room. I go, hi. Oh, hi. And then Joan goes, okay, let's all go eat. And then Edgar goes, you did well, Blair. Come with us. So that was how I found out that, I was able to finish the 10-day tour. And which became, hey, just stay with us, basically. Mm-hmm. I got a lot of, hey, you're all right. You want to hang out? You want to open for me some more? So, and I found out that Gary Shandling did not like my act. Someone there, who liked me on the crew, said, yeah, Gary was like going on about this is wrong for Joan. This shouldn't work. But we eventually became real good friends. So that worked out too. Apparently, people hate me at first.
Was there a real difference between Rodney's audiences and Joan's audiences? I mean, it seems like Rodney's audiences might be a little more raucous than Joan's audiences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Rodney appealed more to the beer drinking younger crowd. So many nights. I mean, the first theater I did with Rodney was in Philadelphia, the Academy of Music, and the lights went down. And the crowd is getting excited because Rodney's about to come out. However, and to make it worse, the announcer goes, are you ready for the show? Ah! Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rodney Dangerfield's opening act. They didn't hear that part. They didn't hear the last part. They heard, welcome Rodney Dangerfield. And I come out and it goes, I swear to God. That's how the crowd reaction. And I'm going, shit. And I start doing my Bee Gees parody, which is what I used to open with. And disco was hated back then. So I go, this looks like a disco crowd. Boo! And I launch into the Bee Gees and I'm like sweating. And finally they start to realize, oh, it's a parody. He's making fun of the song. So then slowly, okay, I'm turning them around. And by the end, it went fine. It was good. But that first time was, but his audiences, you had to be funny immediately. Joan was, they were different. They were a little bit more accepting. There's always that thing when an opening act comes out where, oh, damn it. I got to sit through this. Honey, we got to pay the babysitter for an extra 25 minutes as an opening act. So the good thing about all that was you had to figure out how to be funny fast.
Something that I got from reading your book about the time with Joan Rivers, and I've read this elsewhere in other interviews and other stories about her as well, is that she really kind of had this almost like a den mother mentality. Like she would try to bring people into the fold and really try to make them feel like they were part of the family. Yeah,
that's true. She was very unpretentious, den mother. As a matter of fact, just skipping ahead, after I left Joan to go with other things. About, let's see, 15 years later, I got a call from her, not from her, but from her manager. And I hadn't seen her or worked with her for like at least 15 years. And they said, hey, Joan's doing a date in San Jose. You want to open? And I went, yeah, that'd be good. And so we drove there, and she was, she loved my wife and probably more than me. So we get there, and she's in her gown, she's ready to go. And someone says there's a shoe store, I forget, one of those cheap shoe stores down the block. So she goes, oh, I need shoes. Let's go. In her gown, she goes out the theater, walking down 2 blocks to the shoe store. People are honking their horns. Hey, we're coming to see you, Joan. Oh, good. I'll be back. We go to the shoe store with Joan. She says, Peggy, pick out a pair. You're getting the pair. Goes to it just does that. And then walks back to the theater, walks back, no car, and just goes, does her show. So, I mean, that was kind of the way she was, just kind of like, come on, we're all going on go on a ship, right? We're going to go skiing. Let's go. Come on. 10 in the morning, you'd get phone calls. Yeah. So she was that way.
And she, from what I read in your book too, she was a bit of a tourist. Like she loved when she was in a city, she loved going and seeing things in the city.
Right. Well, the Elvis story.
You, my friend, are the only person I know who's seen the bathroom where Elvis died.
It's unbelievable. So we're doing a show. Joan's doing a show with, and Gary Shandling's on it too. This is in Memphis, and we all go, come on, we're going to see Graceland. We have to go. You can't say no because you don't want to get fired. She brings the entourage, the hairdresser, the manager, B. Peg, Shandling, to go see Graceland. She gets and we don't go with the tourists because no, I'm sorry. We did go with the tourists then. So because it was just part of the tour, but people left her alone, oddly enough, pretty much. But the guy who ran Graceland just was a big Joan fan. So he says, listen, after your show tonight, come back. We'll show you the parts that nobody gets to see. So sure enough, we go back. I mean, this is limousine going into Graceland for when people are stopping at the light. We're going, did they think, is that Elvis? Did he come back? Is he back? Is he in that limousine? We go in, they show us we just go upstairs. We go to see his bedroom, with the 3 TVs in the ceiling. Everything's laid out the way it was just before he died. He's got his necklace on. He's got his guitar. His guitar is right next to the dresser. Then we go into the infamous bathroom where he supposedly died. And they said he died in this chair. The chair they said he died in was like this really, the seat reclined. It was on like a steep 45-degree angle. And we're sitting there going, there's no way he could have fallen out of this chair. We're just debunking the whole thing. And Joan tells us, don't make fun, don't make jokes. They'll get very, very mad at us if we make jokes. Anyway, we got to sit in the chair where Elvis supposedly died. So that was that.
You sat in the chair, but did you try falling out of the chair?
I did try falling out of the chair. It's like, how did he fall? If he fell apparently he fell onto the floor. How did he? It's impossible to fall out of this chair. Well, we all tried it. Shandling, me, Peg. We all tried it. No one was up there, so no one stopped us.
Joan Rivers was red hot right around this time as well, wasn't she? This was right kind of around the time where she started guest hosting The Tonight Show, correct?
Right. Yeah. Again, my timing with these people was phenomenal. I mean, Rodney was, Caddyshack, and I hooked up with her, which is like, getting to be gigantic herself. And her shows, people just loved her shows. So she remained pretty big, But yeah, that was a great time. It was a great time. And if I wasn't with Shandling, I was with Nell Carter sometimes would be the musical act, and Father Guido Sarducci. Mm-hmm. So I was the musical act when Guido was the comic. But yeah, we had some fun times on the road there.
And you did 2 shots on The Tonight Show?
Yes. Yeah, she put me on. Because, that was every comic's dream, go on with Johnny. But, she, and my problem with those shows and all shows is the rights to the songs. I mean, I did parodies, and they just got nervous about putting me on. But she got me on. She fought for me. So I did 1 and then 2. And then I was going to do the 3rd one, supposedly with Johnny. And then she had her big falling out with Johnny. And suddenly I was considered a Joan act. So I didn't get to do my 3rd Tonight Show.
After she made the jump over to Fox to do her own show, did you get to do her show?
Yeah, I did I did that once, or I think I did it one time. Yeah, and I did Arsenio. Yeah, so from that I got some other nice little shots. Yeah, but like I said, it was always the problem with me was the music. It was like, well, he does parodies, and we don't want to get sued by the Bee Gees or something like that. So I had to do a lot of public domain songs. I had to come up with stuff that was not copyrighted or famous, or do a really short parody, which is what I do now to this day. I usually do like 2 lines of the song, so that's usually no problem.
So what led to the end with Joan? Your dog didn't fall in her pool or anything?
Did not. No, this was just stop calling me. Just stop calling. All of a sudden, I would always expect, Joan wants you to hear, Joan wants to do it these days. And all of a sudden, I didn't get calls from the manager anymore. I'm going, oh, it's been about a month. Oh, it's been 2, it's been 3 months. I should call the manager. And I called her manager, and they wouldn't get back to me. So I don't know. The scuttlebutt is that her then agent, she got this new agent, and he got a guitar playing comic who was a lot cheaper than I was to pay. But I never talked to anybody. I never got the official word. So that was it. But by that time I was moving on, and I was with Tom Jones at that time. So.
You were ghosted before being ghosted was even actually a thing.
That's exactly right. I am the original ghosted, my friend. You look up ghosted in the dictionary, it's me walking away from Joan. So there.
After the break, Dennis shares George Carlin's opinion of Las Vegas crowds and reveals what it's like being the opening act for music royalty. That's next on Jeff Does Vegas. You mentioned working with Tom Jones and opening up for Tom Jones. My wife and I saw him in concert many, many, many years ago. Easily one of the best shows we've ever seen. We were sitting in the second row in front of a very enthusiastic group of older Welsh ladies who were very much in love with him. We said the hardest part of being at that show, sitting in the second row, was getting hit in the back of the head with the underwear coming from the upper balcony, because people were still tossing their panties at him at that time.
Yeah.
What was working with Tom Jones like? I mean, I would imagine as a comic opening for musical acts like that, you mentioned that level of disappointment from the audience when, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage. I mean, what's it like working as an opening act for musicians, for somebody like Tom Jones?
Yeah. I really, my next book should be called Get Off the Stage, Who Are You? That should be it. Because that's been my entire life as an opening act. Oh, geez, who's this guy? Well, here's the thing with Tom. I mean, when you open for Rodney and Joan, right, they're top comics, they're tops, but Tom Jones is like royalty. I mean, he's like the guys in that stratosphere, the singers, the musicians. It's a whole nother level of audience worship. So, oh my God, I had the worst was, and again, they kept me for a year, so it couldn't have been that bad. But, there were times when it was a real struggle. It's like the first 5 minutes was like, where's Tom? You get that. And I had to come up with a snappy retort. I'd say, he's still undressed. He can't come out yet. Then they'd boo even more. Because, Tom's undressed. Bring him out now. So I had to come up with a different line. But it was Mud Island in Tennessee. It's an outdoor theater. And there was the stage. Say I'm on the stage. Then in front of me is a huge space, maybe 75 yards of nothing except this big mound of something in the middle. I never understood. Maybe some acts performed there, and then the audience. So I'm on stage and I'm getting nothing. I'm getting, maybe a shot. They're not booing me. I'm not getting heckled. They're not booing me off. But it's like, I want to get out of here. And in the middle of this nightmare, these doors open in this thing in the middle, this mound of whatever in the middle, like 4 doors open, and it's 4 members of the band, and they're butt naked, and they moon me, unseen by the audience behind them. So now I'm dealing with his band mooning me and them like not paying attention, I'm going, yeah, this is going to go in the book when I eventually write it. So, and I got on, I made it off. But that night when Tom got on stage, I mean, he always got an amazing applause, but it was off the charts. So they wanted nothing from an opening act. Yeah. But most of the time it was like, okay, he was pretty funny. You know, by the end, all right, okay, he can live. We'll let him live. You know, that kind of deal.
And from a legend of music to a legend of comedy, you went from working with Tom Jones to working with George Carlin. What year was it that you started working with George?
1988. And I was with him exclusively till 2006. And then things took a turn, but I did some of his shows until 2008.
And so again, how did that come to be? How was George and his management made aware of you and what you were doing?
Well, again, like I said, I still had this agent, and this agent, you know, in between these debacles that I went through with Joan and Rodney and stuff, and Tom Jones, he would book me for a week here or a weekend here with the Four Tops, or, you know, hey, you want to work for the Four Tops next weekend? Or you want to work with Alan King? You want to work with whoever the Three Dog Night, you know? So, and I usually say, yeah, I got nothing else to go with. Yeah, sure. So, you know, it wasn't always like, oh my God, I have no work between these big stars. But one day, this guy Fred, who's my agent, said, hey, you want to open for George Carlin for 3 months? And I said, let me think about it. Open for George Carlin. Are you insane? Of course I'll open for George Carlin. Are you kidding me? So apparently, I don't know how they saw a tape of me, maybe my Tonight Show or whatever. So that's how they got wind of me through the agent. And so I go to the theater in Omaha and don't know what it's going to be like. What will George be like? Will he be horrible? Will he be nice? Will he be? And the first thing I hear the door. I'm downstairs in the dressing room at this theater in Omaha, and I hear the door open upstairs, and I hear George's voice. Never met him before. George's voice going, Dennis, where the fuck are you? I'm I'm down here, George. And he comes down with his manager. He shakes my hand. How you doing? And he goes over to my fruit. I got a vegetable tray or something. He goes, what are those, yours? I'm taking 50 carrots. All right, fuck you. You're not getting all these carrots. It's like I've known the guy for like 70 years or something. And he just walks around the room looking around. He goes, okay, so yeah, hey, we like what you do. And so have a good show and don't fuck up. We'll be watching you. And he leaves. And I go, well, okay, that was kind of interesting. That was fun. And then again, do the show. Luckily, they're receptive. I come off stage thinking, okay, that went pretty well. I don't see George. I don't see his manager. I'm going, uh-oh. And I'm walking away from the stage and I hear like this applause. And George had been behind the curtain listening to me. So he goes, that went great. We'll see you tomorrow. I said, okay. So that's how that started. And then after this 3 months was over, he just said, stay. Why don't you just stay? Fine with me.
And as a person to the general public, what was George Carlin like? Was he, I mean, from what I've read and from what I've heard, he was a really good guy. That was my understanding.
Yeah, a great guy, totally approachable. You know, we go to airports, we take rental cars to the theater. You know, I mean, he'd get the occasional limousine, you know, but as a matter of fact, when he started doing really well, he started chartering planes, which was another wonderful story. But, you know, when I first was with him, I'd fly commercial. They'd fly commercial, you know. They'd fly first class, of course. And as I got on, they'd say, keep walking, Dennis. Back with the sweaty pigs or something like that. But I mean, people at the airport would come, George, how you doing? Hey, how you doing, man? Shake his hand, take a picture, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And very funny. And the great thing about George was he was a hermit. He didn't like to hang out too much. He hung out with me backstage because we had a lot of laughs. Or if we were, you know, in the rental car or the car on the way to the gig. But once you get to the gig, and backstage at the gig, but once you get back to the hotel, you don't see each other until the next gig. You know, and that was after my experience with Rodney and, you know, to some extent Joan. I said, great, less can go wrong. Because I don't see George a lot, but when I do see him, it's great. But then, you know, so that's the thing I was very happy about. We won't have too much contact. So my dog, whatever, so I don't do something wrong and piss him off.
I can only imagine what those car rides with George would have been like. I mean, George, his mind was amazing. Like it seems like he would be the type of person that his mind would just always be going. So I can really only imagine what the car rides were like.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, we both had a period of a Jerry Lewis obsession for some reason, and we just kept doing his "Live and Climb." Why? Yeah, he'd leave me notes with Jerry Lewis and draw a word balloon that said Floyd, and stuff like that. So there was that, and then one car ride we took, we came up with these games. Like the car ride back to the hotel would often be like less than an hour, so it wasn't too much time. But we came up with this game. It's like we'd have come up with a premise and then like try to top each other. So one premise was female stars who have the bushiest pubic hair. And George won because he said Rhea Perlman. And he said, "Yeah, no, you win. You definitely win on that one." But this is the kind of stuff. But I won one, and this was totally politically incorrect. But the premise that we came up with is Kennedy's last words. And I forget what George said, but I came up with, "Why is my head whistling?" Okay. Now, I'm a horrible person for saying that, but I won. I don't care.
Horrible person for laughing at it.
I won, goddammit. I'm taking that to the grave. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff we do. And then once I was with him by himself, the manager could come. So he told me the whole story of his last appearance at the Copacabana. And it was like a 10-20-minute story. I'm just driving going, I can't believe he's telling me this, Yeah, so we had fun in the car, fun backstage. And when we did Vegas, we do like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So no one saw him. He was in his room writing his next special probably. Mm-hmm. So I'd had my kids at that time and my wife, and we just hang out at the pool and have fun. And, I'd see him backstage.
Did George like the Vegas crowds? And the only reason I ask is he was a very intelligent comic. And I'm not saying that Vegas crowds aren't intelligent, because I've been to so many shows and they are, and they can be, but I feel like it's a different level. And with George's comedy, as I say, like it was very intelligent, and it just did he like the Vegas crowd?
No. Does that answer your question?
No.
What else would you like to ask me? Again, it was when we first started, obviously I think when we first started doing Vegas, he was okay with them. But as time went on, and as we found out that he was having, he had years of addictions to Vicodin, red wine, and his heart problems were starting again, and he got grumpier. He hated them, absolutely hated them. But at the beginning, the Vegas showrooms aren't really made for comedy. I don't think. Like the ceilings are too high. They're not hot rooms. So he was used to the theaters where they would just come to see him. They were his fans. They come to see George. Vegas, it's almost like, well, we can't get into Celine Dion, so I don't know. You want to go see this Carlin guy? They don't even know who he is. Probably half of them. And then he wouldn't hold back. So people are just, he's filthy, he's disgusting, that kind of stuff. So he had to deal with that. But he dealt with it the first, how long we do, 10, 15 years or something like that. But as time went on, he just got more and more disenchanted, and he just said, "I hate these guys." And once, I remember I was downstairs in the dressing room, and I could hear him, not clearly, I could hear a little bit, but I could tell by the cadence of the sounds I was hearing that he wasn't doing his act at that moment. So I run upstairs, and he is ripping the audience a new one. It's like, you fucking people. You guys, you're sitting there and you're just groaning, and I have a great career and I hate this fucking town and all this. It just went on for like 3 minutes, and then the funniest thing to me is like, he rips these people saying, so fuck you. I hope you all die in a fire, you stupid fucking people. Then there's a pause, and I now like to talk about dogs and cats. nothing ever happened. Which was the thing that I enjoyed. But he did that a few times, and he finally said, I'm not doing Vegas anymore. He came back to the Orleans maybe 2 years later because they begged him, and because that was off the strip, and those hotels he did off the strip, that people would seek him out, so it'd be more of his fans. So I think he kind of liked it there.
You mentioned some of the bumps along the road while you were working with George. I mean, he had a heart attack. His wife passed away. He went into rehab at one point for addiction. I mean, obviously you're concerned about George when these things happen, but at the same time, is there that level of selfishness, as if to say, shit, here we go again?
Of course. Yes. And especially, and I remember at the 10-year mark, I mean, I'd never been with Rodney. Was the longest was Rodney, 3.5 years. At the 10-year mark, I'm watching him off the side of the stage, going, how long do I have? Because this has been much longer than I've ever lasted with any headliner. And this got to end soon. I did 12 years, and then 14, 15, I'm still with him. You know. And around 2005, I was in the hotel. We were there at Bally's. We were going to do a show that night. And the woman who ran the place said, George had a heart attack and canceling this week. And, oh, geez. And he recovered, you know, and did start doing his things again. But that started happening slowly. Like, he's canceling this date, he's canceling that one. He's not feeling well. He wouldn't necessarily have had a heart attack, but he can't make it. He's having trouble breathing, stuff like that started happening. And I'm going, and then we found out later that not only was his arteries calcifying, but he was battling an addiction to red wine, Vicodin. He'd been on for like years. So he just started getting grumpy and nasty and lashing out at people, and lashed out at his manager, which I'd never seen before. So, that's when I started calling up the cruise lines to say, I better take, this ain't going to last much longer. Yeah. But he started recovering a little bit. He got some treatment. I said, oh, okay, great. You know, good for him, you know, good for me too, but you know, great, you know, good for George. I'm glad he's feeling better. He started doing shows, feeling better. But then I got a call from his limo driver on the way back from a wedding of relatives. Yeah, George passed away today. So that was that. Yeah. So, yeah. But it wasn't a complete shock. You know, it's like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah, that's the deal there.
You mentioned the shows at the Orleans where he came back to Vegas after the run at the MGM Grand, which from my understanding was where things went really, really badly for George with the Vegas crowds. But clearly he decided to come back and work in the city. Were those Orleans shows better for him?
Yes, the crowds were better. I think he was sort of semi-enjoying them, you know. But he came to really never love the Vegas crowds, you know, and then, you know, I can understand that, you know, they could be tough in a showroom like that. You know, they're not really coming to see it. They're just coming to see a show. I never got a chance to tell him, but if he had asked me, I'd say, why don't you just put a thing out in the lobby, you know, it says, if you are at all offended by offensive language, please don't come to the show, or however he would have worded it, which would have been brilliant, you know.
Something along the lines of, if you're offended by profanity, fuck off.
Yeah, perfect. I wish you'd known him. But not only the profanity, but, you know, I mean, his subject matter was, you know, challenging. So, and he wasn't going to stop it for Vegas. He was going to say what he wanted to say, you know. So, I mean, even some of his fans sometimes, I get emails, you know, I had people that came to my shows and they buy CDs online and stuff. Say, what's with George? Why are you so angry? I go, I don't know, ask him. What he's just doing, he's just being George, you know. He's pissed off at a lot of things. So
I do want to talk to you about your book, Touring with Legends, a comic's tale of opening for Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, George Carlin, Tom Jones, and many more.
Oh, that old thing.
Yeah, that old thing. Excellent read. I love this book. I picked it up a while ago and absolutely love it.
Good.
There's so many amazing stories in this book, and not just the stuff that we talked about today with George Carlin and Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers and Tom Jones. But I mean, some of my favorite stories in this book, I loved your stories about touring with Gloria Estefan and her wanting you to parody her music.
She was a dream. She was just so great. Yeah, all around. No, do goys will be goys. I'm not going to do that. to people who came to see Beloved You. I'm not doing Goy's. No, do parodies of my song. No, I'm not doing it. Okay. She was desperate to get me to parodize her stuff.
And then one of my other favorite ones was you getting called in to play softball with Gladys Knight and the Pips.
And I just did a gig with Bubba Knight 3 nights ago. And he remembers that. He remembers, or says he does. I don't know if he just, Bubba, the Gladys Knight. What a great memory that was.
Again, the book is just jammed full of little nuggets like those. And I mean, what was it that actually inspired you to take the plunge and write the book? So many people say, oh, one of these days I'm going to write a book, but you actually did it.
Well, George's manager, after I'd been with them for about a year or two, had a meeting with me. He said, I want to be your manager. I said, okay. What am I going to say? No, I don't have a manager. So he says, I'm going to do great things for you. So, okay. So then, okay. So I'm doing the thing with George. And, nothing's really happening. Nothing. I'm saying, hey, we're gonna do some stuff besides George in case he ever retired. Oh yeah, we'll get to it. So the first thing he says is, you know what? I think I can break you if you do a one-man show. So I write this one-man show and I do it in LA, and it is in a small theater, and it does well. It's pretty. I got a director, and it took me 3-4 months to write, 5 months to write, and the manager didn't even show up. So I went, okay. I'm in London, but have a great show. And nothing came of it. Then he says, you know what? I'm going to get you your own album deal because George has his own record company. Great. That never materialized. And then he finally said, you know what? You should write a book. I go, about what? He goes, I don't know. Said, great idea. So I go, well, what would I write a book about? Now, by this time, I should have said, nothing's going to happen. He's obviously consumed with George, and that's fine. But then I said, maybe I should write down some of these stories, these road stories. So that's how it started. This was like 10 years before I published it. And I came up and just racked my brains. It came out and just kept adding, I remember that. Kept writing and writing. And I finally said, here's the book. And he said, okay, I'll take it to a publisher. He took it to a publisher, and he said, yeah, they turned it down. And I kind of thought, there's other publishers. Going to try? No, kind of busy. So I just laid in my desk. And every once in a while I go, people say, self-publish. I go, okay, I'll do that. And then I did. It costs a lot of money to self-publish. But I kept adding chapters and chapters. And, finally, a friend of mine from Atlantic City says, this guy was a fan of mine, and he said, I want to get your book published. Because I'd sent him a copy, a paper copy. You got to get this out there. And he was obsessed. He finally found this small publisher. I said, okay, let's do it. So that's how that happened.
Well, as I say, it's an excellent read. I really enjoyed it. There's just a lot of really fun stories and a lot of interesting kind of behind the scenes sort of showbiz stuff. So again, congratulations on it, because I really enjoyed it. I really loved it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's people like it. Yeah, a lot of people got it. So, not thousands, but enough to make me feel, okay, good. I guess it was worth doing after all. So there you go.
Excellent. Dennis, thank you once again for taking time to jump on and have a chat. Glad we were finally able to get our schedules together and get you on for a conversation.
Sure. Thank you.
You can catch Dennis performing all over Las Vegas. Check his website at dennisblair.com for dates and venues. Be sure to pick up a copy of the book, Touring with Legends, A Comic's Tale of Opening for Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, George Carlin, Tom Jones, and many more from your favorite online bookseller. And check out Dennis's music on your favorite streaming platforms, including Apple Music and Spotify. Of course, I've got all these links in the show notes at jeffdoesvegas.com. And that wraps up another episode of Jeff Does Vegas. If you've got feedback on this episode of the show, or any other episode for that matter, or you've got suggestions and ideas for topics you'd like me to cover on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to me via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Jeff Does Vegas, or drop me an email directly at jeff@jeffdoesvegas.com. In the meantime, thank you so much for checking out the show. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you'll know the moment new episodes are available. And don't forget to visit jeffdoesvegas.com for past episodes and show notes. My name is Jeff, and this has been Jeff Does Vegas, a Walker New Media production.